Ephesians chapter 5. So as I was kind of seeing how to pace out the next 3 weeks and kind of finish up this, the last couple that we'll do are, I don't know that they're more important than anything we've done up to this point, but it kind of gives us a bigger picture, and the big picture of why love and respect is something that's necessary, essential, helpful. So this week, since it's been a few months since we've gone through couple, and we've spent the last month and a half or so going through chairs, I just wanted to go back and kind of go through everything again, kind of in a quick way. So hopefully, review is always good. At least when I was in school, repetition's the key to learning. That's what they always said, right? So to hear things over and over again is helpful, and at least for a man, when we went through couple first, to go back and remember maybe some of the small little details about closeness, the very first one that was literally months ago, I think was helpful for me just to kind of go back through it. So as I was studying and preparing, I thought we would take this week and just kind of go through it again. And we're not going to go real deep into every letter of the acronym, but just to remind us as husbands and wives that once this series is over, that it's not just like, okay, and then we move on, and it's something that's not part of our marriage until 2 years from now we maybe go through it again, right? It's something that we do continually on a day-to-day basis, on the hard days, on the ones you remember or the ones you forget, and go through all those all the time so that our marriage is getting better. Because the goal, and the author of the book has written this, the goal of this whole thought process, and it's scriptural and following it, the goal of it is to make a bad marriage good and to make a good marriage better, right? So that there's never a point where we're like, yep, I've been doing all these perfectly, I don't need this anymore as a husband, I don't need this anymore as a wife. It's something, we're human beings. And man, we forget things quickly. We stop things real fast. We get into bad habits very easily. And so we really need to be on top of it for our marriages to be what they should be, what God expects them to be. So we'll read Ephesians chapter 5. We'll start here, verse number, where is it start? We'll start at verse number 22, and we'll just read down to verse number 33. Again, just to remind us of God's expectations of us as husbands and wives. So verse number 22, the Bible says, "Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." So, that passage of Scripture, if we just read that every day as a wife and as a husband, you would set your expectations, or what God's expectations for you as your role as a wife, for your role as a husband. If this was just part of our daily routine, the thought process, I think we would find ourselves being more selfless. We would find ourselves trying to fall into the roles that God has given to us on a daily basis. The problem is life is busy. There's a lot of other things that happen with kids and work and finances and health. And there's so much that happens that it doesn't become a conscious choice by us as husbands and wives to live this out unless we're reminded about it on a Sunday morning or we listen to it later in the week. It can be very easy just to kind of fall into the rut of being husband and wife and living our life and just getting by until the next day and looking forward to those little things that you look forward to, whether it's a vacation or simply as the kids are all in bed and it's quiet in the house. Whatever it is you look forward to and just living for that, right? And it's very, very easy to have that perspective on life, and natural to fall into that just kind of complacency. But if we want our marriages to be what God describes here for wives and husbands to be, it requires effort. It requires intentional being as a husband and wife. It requires you to trust your spouse, right? And it comes down to, making a bad marriage good and making a good marriage great or better. You have to trust your spouse. You have to have full confidence, 100% trust in your spouse. You must also, if this is going to work, you have to be the first to act. So, we'll go through the acronyms and remind ourselves of some of these things. But the responsibility to act and be what the Scripture says for us as husbands and wives to be is your responsibility. You're the one to act first. And that's I'm talking to the wives and the husbands. You can't rely on your spouse to be the one to take the first step or the next step, right? It's you, regardless of what their step will be. You must not withhold what your spouse needs most to get what you need most, right? That's a very, very easy temptation to fall into, is that I'm going to withhold what they need to prove a point that they need to give what I need. And that is the opposite of what God says. That's opposite of what this whole lesson series has been about. And you must do this unconditionally, right? You cannot place stipulations or conditions on doing what we've talked about, doing what God says to do. Wives submit, husbands love. There are no conditions on that. These are just straight up commands. And if we all have, I know I have in our marriage, have conditions like, okay, well, I'll do better at this, but you better do this. And if you don't, that gives me authority or gives me leeway to not be all I'm supposed to be. And if that's the case, we're not even trying to be on the energizing cycle. We're content to be on the crazy cycle, and maybe it just doesn't spin as fast as other times, but we're always on it. And that's no way. There's no way to live. There's no way to have a marriage. That's not the marriage that God and the Bible exemplifies for us to be. So, and this is, again, to remind you, his love, right? Husbands, your love motivates her respect, right? When you love her the way she needs to be loved, it energizes her and motivates her to respect you in the way that you need, and vice versa. Ladies, your respect to your husband energizes and motivates him to love in the way that he's supposed to. The Bible even says here, what verse was it? He that loveth his wife loveth himself. You want to get what you need. Love your wife the way she needs to be loved. It's scriptural. Do what you're supposed to do in the way that she needs, and you will get what you need. That is how God has made it to be. So, as a quick review, and I put it on just because it's review, and sometimes you can be like, I've heard this before, so now you have to read it. So, couple. So, closeness, right? C, that was the first part of closeness. And this is what I want you to do. If a husband, okay, so husbands, if you can focus on even just one of these areas daily, like on purpose daily, like take this acronym and find something every single day to focus on with your wife on purpose, like every day. Like Thursday, it doesn't matter what day it is. If you focus on just one of these things on a daily basis, then you will be doing your part on keeping the energizing cycle spinning. And spinning is a good trick. We all know this. Spinning is a good trick that we should all do. You want the energizing cycle to spin. So if you can focus, no one got it, that's okay. If you can focus on one of these things, it's a Star Wars thing. It's okay. Spinning is a good trick. Okay, so ask yourself these questions in all seriousness. Ask yourself these questions, husbands. Am I always remembering to move towards her? Like on a daily basis. Am I always remembering to move towards her and accept her need to talk and connect with me, to be reassured of my love? Right? Wives understand love with closeness. They need that close feeling. So are you as a husband on a daily basis remembering this? And understanding that your wife needs to feel close to you. So are you taking the time intentionally to move towards her? To have conversations. And not just like begrudgingly accept the need that she has, but like fulfilling that need. Right? Being the one that fulfills her need to have those conversations, to connect with you. Because when you connect with her on that level, that deep emotional level, she feels loved. There's no way that she won't. So are you taking the opportunity as a husband that loves his wife, as Christ loves the church, and making that a priority? Or does it just happen when it hasn't happened for a while and she's starved for it and a crazy cycle argument starts, and so now, okay, fine, I'm here. We'll have this conversation now. Or do you do it to prevent those times from coming? To make sure she isn't starved? That's your responsibility as a husband. That's what you're expected to do. So again, taking just one of these things, but I mean, you want to take all of them and focus on them and do them, regardless of what she does or doesn't do. So closeness, always remembering to move towards her, anticipating and looking forward to those connections and being willing to talk and get into those deep conversations. Those are essential. And husbands, that's your responsibility to initiate that. Openness. Do I share, and they're all tied together, obviously. Do I share my thoughts with her, and am I sure that I'm not resisting her efforts to draw me out? Right? As husbands, we can close ourselves out. We can get into our own little world. We compartmentalize things in our life, and we can keep, most of the time, we can keep things separate where when I'm doing this, I don't even think about this. It's not part of my mindset, and we can separate those things in our life. And if we're not careful, the close talks, the deep conversations, we cannot want to have those, because there could be times you just don't want. Maybe you don't want to go there. Maybe it's not something you want to talk about, and so you don't, and so you close it off and you don't discuss it. And it's one word answers. Yep, nope, I don't know. Usually, you don't want to say I don't care, because that'll start a fight. But I don't know, right? Those kind of conversations that does not. It's not inclusive for openness, right? That you want to be completely open. Do you share your thoughts with her, right? Do you tell her is there things that are hidden between each other? And this is something I think the longer you're married, if you're trying and striving, the better you should get at. I could tell you when Lisa and I first got married, I was not an open book, because you live by yourself and you don't tell everybody everything. And so there are things that just are you. But when you realize leave, cleave, weave, right, one flesh, there's no reason to keep things from your spouse. You tell her your failures. You tell him the things that you don't tell anybody else. That's how you build that relationship. That's how you build that strength. That's how that weaving gets even tighter, is because there's nothing between you two. And that's that openness, that complete transparency. So as a husband, who not always do we want to do that, be completely transparent. Are you sure? Do you share everything? Are there things you just don't tell her because you don't want to worry her? Are there things you don't tell her because you don't want her to be upset? Are there things you don't talk about because you just don't want to hear what she has to say? The answer is yes, because we all do that. All of us men have things that we don't talk about our wives with because we don't really want to get into it. Because maybe she doesn't agree, and we know she won't agree, and so we just don't want to talk about it. Because if we don't talk about it and don't deal with it, then we can claim ignorance. I didn't know, right? But we're just asking to jump on the crazy cycle in those moments. Talk to your wife about things. And wives, when he comes to you with things that you maybe are like, what are you talking about? Understand, maybe he's trying to be open and transparent with you, to get close to you and accept those conversations, and have those conversations. Nothing separated. So that's openness. Understanding. Are you careful not to try and fix her every time she brings up her concerns and problems? And that goes back to it's not about the nail video, right? Where she has the nail in her head and she just wants somebody to listen to her and understand. She doesn't need you to grab the hammer or claw hammer and pull the nail out of her head. She doesn't want that right now, right? She just wants you to hear her. And for a husband, you're like, that makes zero sense whatsoever. I can fix the problem and everything will be fine. But to her, that's not the problem. She just needs someone to listen. Now, if she has an actual nail in her head, you probably shouldn't take it out, because that's probably worse. You probably just go to the hospital. But anyways, we shouldn't have to be talking about that. But are you careful to not try and fix her, right? With men, we like to fix things. Give us a problem, we'll find a solution, or we'll attempt to find a solution. We will square peg round hole if we have to. We will fix what needs to be fixed. Give me a problem, we'll find a solution. With your wives, sometimes you can't. That's not the problem. That's not the issue. That's not what she needs. She just needs an ear. She just needs you to listen. She just needs you to understand. Am I remembering she is an integrated personality, and whatever happens affects all of her, especially her emotions, right? Remember, your wife, guys, does not think the same way you do. She does not feel the same way you do. She does not handle stress. She does not handle problems and concerns the same way that you do. And as a husband, you can't expect her to handle things the same way you do. Now, for a husband, it can become frustrating for you if she just doesn't logically understand what you're trying to lay out as a solution. But that doesn't matter. For you as a husband, taking all that we've talked about, it's about being sacrificial. It's about seeing things through the pink instead of the blue, that we all see things through as men. Understanding that she needs someone to just be there. And if she can just get it all out and say it all, then maybe she's willing to listen to some things you might have to say, some suggestions you might have. But if we try to interject, like in your mind as a husband, you're like, all right, I already know how to fix this. You've said 5 words and I've got the solution. And so that's all you're thinking about is, okay, as soon as she breathes, here comes the solution. And she does not want that. Not right now. Maybe later. Maybe she'll want that solution at some point. But you just need to understand she's emotionally different than you. And you need to understand that. And you need to adjust your blue sunglasses to understand that that's what she needs from you. She does not compartmentalize like you do. So you cannot expect her to handle problems the way you handle them. And you have to be understanding of that. And that's not always easy for us to do. But that God doesn't say, as long as it's easy, go ahead, do it. If it's hard, skip that one. No, love her like you love yourself. And that means you would make accommodations for yourself to make it easier on yourself. So that is what we should do for her. Understanding. Peacemaking. Ask yourself, am I always willing to resolve issues? Right? And this is the whole don't go to bed mad thing, right? But man, we sometimes, if we don't want to resolve an issue, we just don't bring it up anymore. We won't talk about it. I'm done. No agreement has come to. We've not resolved anything. It's still out there hanging, but we don't want to deal with it anymore. And we can say, well, let's just drop it and not talk about it anymore. And for us, we put that in that little compartment of we're done with it. And for a guy, we're fine. What's for supper? Right? We've moved on in that instance. For your wife, she does not do that. She does not put it in a compartment. She still thinks about it. If it's not resolved, it'll play over in her head. The conversations you had will continue on a loop in your head. And then she'll start to add other conversations, wondering what was going inside your head when you said this. What were you actually thinking? And there'll be like 5 other conversations that never actually happened. But in her head, she's going through them as if they might have happened and might be something you thought or could have said. And so what you've done by saying, let's just drop it as a husband, you've created turmoil in your wife. And you've allowed it, and it doesn't end well for you as a husband either. It's not like it actually goes away, right? It's just like anything. When there's issues, pretending like they don't exist doesn't actually make them go away. They usually get worse if you pretend they don't exist. And this is the same way. If you are unwilling to take an unresolved issue and leave it in limbo, if you're willing to leave it in limbo, it's only going to get bigger. It's only become more of a problem. It's only going to become a more bigger argument down the road that still will need to be resolved. So when there are things you don't want to resolve, but you know it needs to be resolved because she wants it resolved, handle it. Resolve it. Bring that closeness back together again. Because when you resolve those issues, and it may not resolve in the way you want, but if you're willing to resolve them, that brings that relationship closer again. It mends that. Because if you leave them in limbo, it's like the opposite ends of a magnet. Right? You can try to get close, but it's going to repel. You can force it even. You can force 2 ends of a magnet that are opposite, and you can hold them together. You can make it work. But as soon as you let go, boom! Right? And that's how it'll be. You want to move close to your wife when you got a problem in limbo, you're going to get a palm to your face. Physically, possibly, emotionally, for sure. Right? It doesn't work. So don't allow those things. Understand her need and her desire she feels loved when you're willing to resolve those issues, even when we don't want to. Sometimes you have to, again, be selfless, do things you don't want to do in order to love her. And that's the goal. So that's peacemaking. Loyalty. Do I constantly look for ways to all? That's not it. Do I constantly look for ways to tell her that I will be loyal to her forever? Don't know what happened there. Do I look for ways to tell her that I will be loyal to her forever? Not as she knows, right? The old codger, that's like the great-great-grandpa that says, I told my wife the day I married her I loved her. I never have to say it again because she knows. Baloney. Old codger. Not all old people are wise. I know we've been told to honor our elders and honor our parents, but dumb young people become dumb old people. So not all old people have wisdom. They're not always right. They are incorrect sometimes. And that old guy that said that is wrong. Right? That's like my grandpa. My grandpa on my mom's side. He was a loving guy. He didn't know he didn't love you, but he just wasn't expressive. I don't know if I ever heard him say I love you to my grandma. Ever. And I didn't doubt that he did, but that's not a way to live. She needs to know. She needs to know that she is yours, you are hers, and that is the way it'll be forever. It doesn't matter how she physically changes, doesn't matter how she emotionally changes, doesn't matter what illnesses might come up in your life and in her life. No matter what happens, she's yours. That'll never change. And she needs to visibly know that. She needs to audibly hear you say that. It can't just be an understood, right? It's not the understood one in front of the X in an algebraic problem. I've been doing math with Carter and Madison. The understood one that you're just like, there's no number there. It's an X, but there's an understood one. There's no understood. Explain it. Tell her. Let her hear it. Don't let it be just, it's understood. No, she needs to hear you say. It's not enough to just be understood as that's the way it is. She needs to hear it constantly. Again, if you take one of these things on a daily basis and focus on it, intentionally do it. It might feel out of the ordinary because we aren't doing it every day. But once you start doing it every day, she's going to feel loved by it. And if she knows that you're loyal to her no matter what happens, it's not enough even to just resist temptations either. Right? It's not enough for us as husbands to just resist all the temptations around us. Reinforce your loyalty to her on purpose so she knows. And don't just be like, I didn't watch the girl that was jogging today. I just want you to know because I'm loyal to you, right? Don't resist that because that's what you're supposed to do. But now find ways to show her you're loyal to her without bringing that part of it up. You just tell her you're loyal to her. Let her know. She needs to know that. Be audible about loyalty. Esteem. Oh, man, I must have been... The typos are strong. Do I always let... I'm misspelling things like crazy in here, James. It's embarrassing. Do I always let her know that I treasure her and put highest value on her as a person? Right? Do you let her know that? Do you let her know that you esteem her? That she is valued in your life, in your marriage, that she's valued. Right? And that could be how pretty you think she is. That could be how attracted you are to her. It could be her opinion. It could be how her brain works. It could be how she cleans the house. It could be how she took care of the kids. It could be many different things that you praise her for, not just take for granted. I take supper for granted. It's not exactly what I want, or it's always there. I mean, wow, how you should esteem her, laud her for those things. Do I let her know that what she does and things are important to me? Right? Is her opinion on things valued by you? Or if you've got your way set and you are the smartest in this area and she has input, it's like, kind of disregarded. It doesn't mean you have to take her input and take her advice every single time, but she wants to know that you hear her and that it's valued, it's esteemed. Does she know that you couldn't possibly do this life without her? Or does she think, well, if I wasn't around, he'd be fine? She needs to know from your mouth, from your actions, that this life could not be done in the way it is without her. And she needs to know that's real. She needs to know that you believe that and that you feel that. And that's how you view your marriage and your life, that without her, ain't going to work. And it's not just some fairy tale or Disney movie that those things come up and you break into song, but it's actual, real, heartfelt, emotional thing that you fully believe. And again, we could go through a lot more things on all these, and this is just a basic 1 or 2 sentence description of these things. But if, again, as husbands, starting today, pick one and focus on it every day, And it could be the same thing. And you're like, I'm not that creative. It's not about creativity. It's about just life. It's about just living in a way that this is how you treat your spouse. You understand her need, and you understand you're the one that fulfills that need. And if you don't fulfill that need, it doesn't get filled. If you don't love her the way Christ loved the church, she doesn't get that from another human being. So if you're fine with just not fulfilling your role and not giving her what only you can give her, you need to take probably a deeper look at yourself and see where you are spiritually. Because that's an attitude towards God's word that says, it doesn't really apply to me. Not in this area. Or I'm fine. And as husbands, we're not. You're not. None of us are. We all have areas that we can do better at. And this is, pick one, focus on it. Sweep her off her feet again. Do it. Why would you not? You're the only one that can do it, and we should focus on these things. All right, next. There we go. So chairs. So that brings up, girls, you got to look through your blue sunglasses. So wives, husbands spell respect, unless it's me typing late at night, as chairs. So your desire as a wife to unconditionally respect your husband, and that concept we talked about a few times, but you expect him to unconditionally love you, regardless of your looks, anything, how your attitude is, where you are emotionally. He should love you for who you are because that's what God commands him to do. God also commands a wife to reverence and submit to her husband unconditionally, regardless of where he's at emotionally, where he's at stress-wise, where he's at physically. You are commanded to do the same thing. So your desire to unconditionally respect him will go far when keeping that energizing cycle spinning. Again, spinning is a good trick. It is. Okay, so ask yourselves. It didn't hit the first time, didn't hit the second time either. Ask yourself, so conquest. Am I always standing behind him and letting him know I support his work? Right? Are you always standing behind him and letting him know you support his work and his endeavors at his physical job? Right? So whatever job that he has, do you support him in that, like audibly? Does he know that you're behind him in that? And that, again, I made this silly description before for me, right? Tell him he's the best ice cream cone maker in the world. Like there's not another human being that makes ice cream cones like he does. Now apply that to his job, right? Whatever he does. My wife tells me that every day. You're the best ice cream maker ever, honey. No, she doesn't. That's not true. Because that's silly. But I want you to think about, I want you to remember, as a wife, it matters. And you'd be like, that's silly. Why would I don't know what to say. He would like to hear it. And he might even be like, okay, that's weird. But he'll think about it and be like, she respects my skills and the things that I have gotten good at in my job that bring home the paycheck, right? Regardless if you as a wife are contributing to that or not, the skills that he has done, that he has employed, that have become the way you live your life, if he knew you respected those things, that you were proud of him for what he does, that would go a long way. For him. He will feel loved by that. You believe in his ability to make it happen. Even if sometimes he doesn't. Even if sometimes his abilities fall short. But if he knows you're his cheerleader, right? The cheerleaders on football teams and stuff, they cheer even when they lose. Right? They're still cheering when their team is getting skunked. They still cheer. It's not like, well, you guys are bad today. We're going to take it the day off. They still cheer, right? They cheer because that's their team. That's who they want to win. That's who they want to succeed, so they cheer them on. Are you your husband's cheerleader even when he's not succeeding? Even when he's struggling at work? Even when things are not going well? Even when it's 70 degrees in July and you're like, how do I sell ice cream when it's September and July? And everyone gets mad at you because you like, I want 90 degrees. And then they say next week's going to be hot and it's all your fault. I say, you're welcome, because I need warm weather. Right? Do you cheer him on when things aren't going well? That was a way weird rabbit trail. But there's no way, does he know there's no way the job he does can be done better by anybody else? That's what you think as his wife. Does he know that's what you think? It doesn't matter if that's true. Obviously, there's always somebody that's better than what we are at the things we do. But he should know you don't think that. He should know you think he's the best. And that seems silly. It seems a little childish. It seems a little like high school, boyfriend, girlfriend thing. But man, you want to pump a guy up, be his cheerleader. You want him to feel loved and respected, be his cheerleader. And we're not out playing football games. And sometimes, we're doing sports and things, and that's fun to be cheered on. But just in life, you want him to feel respected and loved, cheer him on. Make sure he knows that you think he's the best. Hierarchy. Do I let him know I respect and appreciate his desire to protect and provide? So we talked about God's plan, right? His hierarchy. Christ is the head, then the husband, then the wife, then the kids. That's how he set it up intentionally, on purpose. So what have you said or done recently to communicate that you know this about your husband and you appreciate the responsibility that he's willing to take on by being the husband, by being the dad? The haves you have, right? Do you focus on the haves you have or the have-nots that you have not? Does he always hear about the things that aren't quite what you want them to be? The things that you need, the things that are wish you were better with the house, with the clothes, with the kids, with the car, with the things? Is it always about, well, if I only had this, if we only did this, if it was only better here? Or does he hear about the things he has provided for you already and how appreciative you are of these things? And again, wives, take one of these things and do them. Focus on them on a daily basis. Make it part of your relationship. Not just every once in a while, not just on his birthday or Valentine's Day or whatever, but find a way to incorporate these things into your life on a daily basis. Understanding in a hierarchy, God put him in position of authority in that hierarchy, and that comes with responsibilities. But he, as a man, is built to want to provide for his family, want to protect his family. Does he know you know that and you're appreciative of that? And that leads into authority. Have you said out loud by your words and by your actions that you recognize him as having the primary authority? Does he know that you believe and you are behind and support the fact that he is the primary authority in your house? Which means sometimes the things he says, and the decisions he makes may not be what you would do, may not be what you agree with. But even in those instances, and probably this is where you display it most, is in those instances, you respect that his word is final. You can go with authority and be super loud without saying a word, right? You can yell at the top of your lungs without saying a single word out loud by your attitude towards his authority, by your attitude towards his leadership. Does he know that you believe he has primary authority because he has primary responsibility, right? As a husband, you have the responsibility of how your home goes. The ups, the downs, it falls on your shoulders, right? Just like a boss in a job, that's how it works. The husband has responsibilities, so therefore he should have the authority. Do you let him be the leader? Do you allow him to lead? Have you helped him lead that? And then that doesn't mean, okay, I have a husband, I want to help lead, so I'm going to make him better and push him to lead. No. Have you supported him in his leadership? Have you supported his decisions? Have you supported when he makes those choices? This is what we are doing as a family. And it could be, this is where we're going to eat lunch. Or it could be big choices. This is where we're going to move. Are you a supportive voice? Or are you like the 7-year-old that's like, I don't want to eat there, Dad. No, let's go here. Is the wife also going, no, honey, I don't want that? And then the husband's like, all right, fine, I'm done. You choose. I'm never choosing where we eat ever again. Right? And that's drastic and dramatic. But a husband, if he's not supported, that'll be the choice. Eventually, you'll be making all the choices. Now you're leading as a wife because you've not allowed him to lead. Help him lead. Support him. Does he know that you respect and trust him enough that if he said, this is my decision in this area, that you would be supportive? Does he know that? Does he believe that about you? That if he said, not in an attitude of my way or the highway, but if he said, this is it, and you felt differently, but he said, this is it, does he know that you would go with him? That you would support him? Again, take an area and focus on it. Make it something you do on a daily basis. Ties into insight. Do I trust his ability to analyze things and offer solutions and not just depend on your intuition, right? Not to devalue an intuition, but also understand he has insight that you don't have. He sees things you don't see. And he feels respected, which means he feels loved when you defer. Do you ever defer to him? How often do you defer? And again, take one. Focus on it on a daily basis. Do one of these things. Make him feel respected. Make him feel loved. Do you trust his ability to analyze, and do you defer to him? How often do you defer to him? Relationship. Do I spend shoulder to shoulder time with him whenever I am able? Do you let him know that you're his friend as well as his lover? Does he know you like him? Do you ever say, I like you? Now, when, at Bible college, when we were going to Bible college, there were the stages of getting to, in a relationship with a girl, you're just friends, and then you got to the I like you stage. You couldn't say love yet, right? Love is way too far. But eventually you get to I love you stage, right? You're I like you first, typically. Unless you're Jacob, they just jump right in to love immediately. You just display it all. No. But does he know? Does your husband know you like him? And we talked about this. I mean, the conversation, do you know she loves you? Yeah, I know she loves you, but does she like you? I don't know. Maybe not today. I mean, a guy would like to hear, you know what? I like you. If you just said to your husband, fill in the blank name, I really like you. He'd be like, what? Really? Really? Okay, cool. Like, he would enjoy that. I mean, it might feel weird, might feel corny, but tell your husband you like him. Do things he likes to do. And the phrase, whenever you're able. You're not always able. There are other responsibilities as a wife and a mother and things you have. But if you're able to do just the stuff that he wants to do you take those opportunities? Or you're like, look for ways to not do those things. I don't want to go sit out here and be bored to death. I don't want to go fishing. I don't want to go golfing. I'm bored out of my mind. I'm not going to do these things. I'm going to sit here thinking of all the other things I could be doing instead of doing nothing while he does this. Relationship. He values that friendship with you. Do you look for opportunities to fulfill that? Or do you look for opportunities to avoid it? Again, take one thing, focus on it daily. And then lastly, sexuality. Do I honor his need for sexual release? Do you understand, as you are the only human being that is physically able, under God's law, to fulfill this role, do you honor that desire of his? Do you look where you can be the one to fulfill that and make him feel loved? Or do you look for ways, again, to avoid it? Is it about strategy and power? Is it about meeting his needs? Right? It can become about strategy. That part of the relationship can become about strategy and being able, I'll give this if you do this. If he does this, then I'm willing to do that. Or is it about, as the whole thing should be, what I can do to fulfill my spouse's desires and needs? And we, as whichever spouse it is, should be willing to lay down everything that we want for them in every area, and from each side. If a husband and wife will strive to spell love and respect to their spouse in a way that they understand, then you cannot help but meet each other's needs. But you've got to strive for that. That's why I say take one and focus on it on a daily basis. Your responsibility is not to get your needs met. Your responsibility is to meet your spouse's needs. And if your desire is that, if you look for those opportunities, if you want to make that be fulfilled because you realize you're the only one that can do that, the energizing cycle is going to be going like crazy. And that's exactly where you want it to be. That doesn't mean that hiccups won't happen. Doesn't mean that you won't, need to change things up or that something won't get on the crazy cycle. Life happens. Frustrations happen. But if your whole attitude and mental view of your marriage is what can I do for them, always be the one willing to give up what you want in that relationship and focus on what they need. If you're willing to just be willing to say, whatever, I feel like I need this. And there's times, you need something in that relationship from your spouse and you need it now. And you feel frustrated that you're not getting it. But if you, as that person that's frustrated they're not getting what they need, say, I'm going to give that up and I'm going to see what I could do for them. That's going to energize your spouse. And that's selfless loving. That's loving like Christ loved the church. That's submitting as unto the Lord. It's to say, even when I'm so frustrated that he's not being what he's supposed to be, or I'm so frustrated that she's missing the mark in this area, but even in those moments, and again, that's where you prove it most, when you need it most, you say, but I won't do it because I need it. What can I do for them? How can I fulfill their, and that's hard to do. Because you have to swallow some pride. You have to swallow some frustration, maybe even anger or hurt feelings. And to do something for someone else when you're feeling those emotions and those thoughts, that's a test. That's a test of how selfless you are. Are you doing it because you want it, or are you doing it as unto the Lord? Are you doing it because Christ loved the church and Christ doesn't, there's nothing we can offer the Lord that he needs. We need him. And he gave us everything. So we need to be ones willing to give that up. So the beauty, and this is the last thing I'll say, the beauty about the energizing cycle is when you energize your spouse with what gets them going, you're going to get back the same. And that's a mentality we have to change in our brains, is that I give not to get what I want, but that's typically what happens. But I give to give them what they want. So next week, what we're going to talk about is what your marriage is really about. It's not even really about these things. Your marriage is really about your relationship between you and Jesus. That's really what solidifies your relationship between your spouse. And that's where we'll go next week. So.